Hello, adventurers and fans of Dungeons and Dragons. Got my Jeff Goldblum pillow. Now, I know if you guys watched my first video on YouTube, which is called Read Along Dungeons and Dragons Player's Manual 5E Part 1, guess what? That was done, God, when was that done? It was done over 2 years ago, and I have not picked up and recorded any more since then. So this is part 2. Now, unfortunately, when I did part 1, I was using a GoPro, and those, I don't know of any way, at least I didn't have the capabilities of hooking that up so it had constant power. And I think the only way you can use a GoPro where it doesn't run out of, like right now, I'm plugged in. I have a huge 2 terabyte iPad that I'm recording this on. So, man, I think we could probably go for 4 or 5 hours. We're going to see. Probably what's going to happen is I'm going to be like super thirsty or need to take a break, and then we'll end it there, and then we'll do part 3. But for those of you that watched part 2, and like I said, over 2 years ago, but almost 3,000 views, and I got a lot of positive feedback and comments. So here it is. Finally, we're going to pick up right where it just bluntly stopped last time. I apologize for that. We were on page 8. Remember, we're reading, remember the 3 core books I was telling you about: the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. We're going to make it through this Player's Handbook eventually, I promise you. So if you started watching this video right after you finished part 2, I'm going to try to include a link. I think I need to do that on an actual computer where you can put a little square so you can watch part 1, and then eventually I'll put one part 3. Anyway, we are on page 8 of the D&D Player's Handbook, Volume 5E, which I believe came out in 2014. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Wonders of Magic. So I'm probably going to read the same. I'm going to start off by reading the same paragraph that the last video abruptly ended on. So that's where we're going to pick up, okay? And I'm working on getting a more professional grade microphone in here so you can hear me better. Now, let me just say, this is a great thing to have on by your bedside if you just want to listen and just have background noise or whatever. I know you guys are anxious for me to get reading, but I do know that if you have YouTube Plus or Premium or whatever, you can put your phone on standby and just listen to the audio of this. So that's an option as well. All right, so look, we're just going to pick up right where we left off. I got some new artworks from last. Then I did not have this last time. This is a cool. This is actually the cover of the Monster Manual, and I got that. Oh, I got to fix the corner of that poster, but that's actually a poster size replica of that art. I wish I knew the artist's name. I could look it up if I had the Monster Manual with me, but I don't. All right, all that aside, thank you again so much for tuning in. If these videos take off like I'm hoping that they will someday, please like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications so you can be notified when I do part 3 and part 4 and so on and so on. So here we are. We're 4 minutes into the video and I haven't even started yet. So here we go. The Wonders of Magic. Few D&D adventures end without something magical happening. Whether helpful or harmful, magic appears frequently in the life of an adventurer, and it is the focus of part 3. In the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, practitioners of magic are rare, set apart from the masses of people by their extraordinary talent. Common folk might see evidence of magic on a regular basis, but it's usually minor: a fantastic monster, a visibly answered prayer, a wizard walking through the streets with an animated shield guardian as a bodyguard. For adventurers, though, magic is key to their survival. Without the healing magic of clerics and paladins, adventurers would quickly succumb to their wounds. Without the uplifting magical support of bards and clerics, warriors might be overwhelmed by powerful foes. Without the sheer magical power and versatility of wizards and druids, every threat would be magnified tenfold. Magic is also a favored tool of villains. Many adventurers are driven by the machinations of spellcasters who are hell-bent on using magic for some ill end. A cult leader seeks to awaken a god who slumbers beneath the sea. A hag kidnaps youths to magically drain them of their vigor. A mad wizard labors to invest an army of automatons with a facsimile of life. A dragon begins a mystical ritual to rise up as a god of destruction. These are just a few of the magical threats that adventurers might face. With magic of their own, in the form of spells and magic items, the adventurers might prevail. That's you. All right, so now, like I said, I think I told you guys I was going to hold up and show you artwork. But if you're reading along, hopefully you are, in your book, this is part 1. We're actually really starting to get into the meat and potatoes of the player's handbook, finally, right? Because basically all I've done so far is the introduction. All right, chapter 1, part 1, creating a character. Chapter 1, step-by-step characters, okay? This is great. I mean, if you're just a D&D nerd like myself and you just like all things D&D and you just want to have it surround you and be a part of your life, this is a great thing to just listen to. And if you're a brand new player and you're either too lazy to read or you don't read that well, or for whatever reason you don't have time to read, this is great. You can listen to this in your car. Don't watch it though while you're driving. You keep your eyes on the road. Hey, you, I'm talking to you. You keep your eyes on the road. Chapter 1, step-by-step characters. Your first step in playing an adventurer in the Dungeons & Dragons game is to imagine and create a character of your own. This is the fun of it. Your character is a combination of game statistics, role-playing hooks, and your imagination. You choose a race, such as a human or halfling, and a class, such as a fighter or wizard. You also invent the personality, appearance, and backstory of your character. Once completed, your character serves as your representative in the game, your avatar in the Dungeons & Dragons world. Before you dive into step 1 below, think about the kind of adventurer you want to play. You might be a courageous fighter, a skulking rogue, a fervent cleric, or a flamboyant wizard. I often like to be a dwarf cleric. I don't know why, but that's usually my preferred, but I need to expand and do other things. Or you might be more interested in an unconventional character, such as a brawny rogue who likes hand-to-hand combat, or a sharpshooter who picks off enemies from afar. Do you like fantasy fiction featuring dwarves or elves? Try building a character of one of those races. Do you want your character to be the toughest adventurer at the table? Consider a class like Barbarian or Paladin. If you don't know where else to begin, take a look at the illustrations in this book to see what catches your interest. And I forgot to show you this picture here. It doesn't say what it is, but there it is right there. Hopefully you're following along, but if you don't have the book, let's see. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, once you have a character in mind, follow these steps in order, making decisions that reflect the character you want. Your conception of your character might evolve with each choice you make. What's important is that you come to the table with a character you're excited to play. Throughout this chapter, we use the term character sheet to mean whatever you use to track your character, whether it's a formal character sheet like the one at the end of this book, some form of digital record, or a piece of notebook paper. An official D&D character sheet is a fine place to start until you know what information you need and how to use it during the game. And here is an example in the back of the book. Of course, you're not going to rip your book apart, but you can take this down and have copies of character sheets made. All right? Put all your stats and everything else. Building Bruenor. Bruenor? I'm not sure what that is. Each step of character creation includes an example of that step, with a player named Bob building his dwarf character, Bruenor. Oh, okay, that's his name, Bruenor. All right, 1. Choose a race. Every character belongs to a race. just like, I guess, in the real world. One of the many intelligent humanoid species in the D&D world. The most common player character races are dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans. Some races also have sub-races, such as mountain dwarf or wood elf. Chapter 2 provides more information about these races, as well as the less widespread races of dragonborn, gnome, half-elves, half-orcs, and tieflings. The race you choose contributes to your character's identity in an important way by establishing a general appearance and the natural talents gained from culture and ancestry. Your character's race grants particular racial traits, such as special senses, proficiency with certain weapons or tools, proficiencies in one or more skills, or the ability to use minor spells. These traits sometimes dovetail with the capabilities of certain classes. See Step 2. For example, the racial traits of Lightfoot halflings make them exceptional rogues, and high elves tend to be powerful wizards. Sometimes playing against type can be fun too. Half-orc paladins and mountain dwarf wizards, for example, can be unusual but memorable characters. Your race also increases one or more of your ability scores, which you determine in Step 3. Note these increases and remember to apply them later. Record the traits granted by your race on your character sheet. Be sure to note your starting languages and your base spell as well. Building Brunor, Step 1. Bob is sitting down to create his character. He decides that a gruff mountain dwarf fits the character he wants to play. He notes all the racial traits of dwarves on his character sheet, including his speed of 25 feet and the languages he knows, Common and Dwarfish. Step 2. Choose a class. Every adventurer is a member of a class. Class broadly describes a character's vocation, what special talents he or she possesses, and the tactics he or she is most likely to employ when exploring a dungeon, fighting monsters, or engaging in a tense negotiation. The character classes are described in Chapter 3, Classes. Your character receives a number of benefits from your choice of class. Many of these benefits are class features, capabilities, including spell casting, that set your character apart from members of other classes. You also gain a number of proficiencies, armor, weapons, skills, saving throws, and sometimes tools. Your proficiencies define many of the things your character can do particularly well, from using certain weapons to telling a convincing lie. On your character sheet, record all the features that your class gives you at first level. We're going to talk a little bit about level now. Level. Typically, a character starts at first level and advances in level by adventuring and gaining experience points, or XP. A first level character is inexperienced in the adventuring world, although he or she might have been a soldier or a pirate and done dangerous things before. Starting off at first level marks your character's entry into the adventuring life. If you're already familiar with the game, or if you are joining an existing D&D campaign, your DM might decide to have you begin at a higher level, on the assumption that your character has already survived a few harrowing adventures. And there's a little box, a little side note here. It says, Quick Build. Each class description in Chapter 3 includes a section offering suggestions to quickly build a character of that class, including how to assign your highest ability scores, a background suitable to the class, and starting spells. Okay. Just gonna... Okay. Moving on. We're on page 12 now. 12 and 13. We're just starting at the top of page 12. There's a dwarf right there. That's Brunor. That's the character that we're going to... Record your level on your character sheet. If you're starting at a higher level, record the additional elements your class gives you for your levels past first. Also record your experience points. A first level character has 0 XP. A higher level character typically begins with a minimum amount of XP required to reach that level. See Beyond First Level later in this chapter. Hit points and hit dice. Your character's hit points define how tough your character is in combat and other dangerous situations. Your hit points are determined by your hit dice, short for hit point dice. And then we have an ability score summary. All right, there's the strength, measures the natural athleticism, bodily power important for barbarian, fighter, paladin. Racial increases. Mountain dwarf has a +2 of strength. A dragonborn has a +2. A half-orc has a +2. And a human has a +1. Moving down to dexterity. This measures physical agility, reflexes, balance, poise, and it's important for a monk, a ranger, or a rogue. The racial increases here. If you're an elf, you get a +2 for dexterity. If you're a halfling, you get a +2. A forest gnome, a +1. And a human, a +1. Constitution. Your constitution, that measures your health, stamina, vital force. That's important for everyone, all the characters. Racial increases. If you're a dwarf, you get a +2 on constitution. If you're a stout halfling, you get a +1. If you're a rock gnome, +1. Half-orc, +1. Human, +1. Moving down to intelligence. Intelligence obviously measures your mental acuity, information recall, analytical skill. Very important if you are a wizard. The racial increases. If you're a high elf, you get a +1 on intelligence. If you're a gnome, you get a +2. A tiefling, a +1. A human, a +1. Wisdom. Wisdom measures awareness, intuition, and insight. Very important for a cleric or a druid. The racial increases. If you're a hill dwarf, you get a +1 on wisdom. A wood elf, +1. Human, +1. Charisma. That measures confidence, eloquence, leadership. Important for a bard, a sorcerer, or a warlock. These are just examples. Racial increases for charisma. If you're a half-elf, you get a +2. A drow gets a +1. A lightfoot halfling, a +1. A dragonborn, a +1. A human, a +1. And a tiefling, a +1. At first level, your character has 1 hit die, and the die type is determined by your class. You start with hit points equal to the highest roll of that die as indicated in your class description. You also add your constitution modifier, which you'll determine in step 3. This is also your hit point maximum. Record your character's hit points on your character sheet. Also record the type of hit die your character uses and the number of hit die you have. After you rest, you can spend hit dice to regain hit points. See resting in Chapter 8, Adventuring. We're going to talk about proficiency bonus. The table that appears in your class description shows your proficiency bonus, which is +2 for a first level character. Your proficiency bonus applies to many of the numbers you'll be recording on your character sheet. Attack rolls using weapons you're proficient with. Attack rolls with spells you cast. Ability checks using skills you're proficient in. Ability checks using tools you're proficient with. Saving throws you're proficient in. Saving throw DCs for spells you cast, explained in each spellcasting class. Your class determines your weapon proficiencies, your saving throw proficiencies, and some of your skill and tool proficiencies. Skills are described in Chapter 7 using ability scores, and tools in Chapter 5, equipment. Your background gives you additional skill and tool proficiencies, and some races give you more proficiencies. Be sure to note all these proficiencies as well as your proficiency bonus on your character sheet. Your proficiency bonus can't be added to a single die roll or other number more than once. Occasionally, your proficiency bonus might be modified, doubled or halved, for example, before you apply it. If a circumstance suggests that your proficiency bonus applies more than once to the same roll or that it should be multiplied more than once, you nevertheless add it only once, multiply it only once, and half it only once. Building Brunor. Okay, we're back to that. Step 2. Bob imagines Brunor charging into battle with an axe. One horn on his helmet broken off. He makes Brunor a fighter and notes the fighter's proficiencies and first level class features on his character sheet. As a first level fighter, Brunor has 1 hit die, a D10, and starts with his hit points equals to 10 plus his constitution modifier. Bob notes this and will record the final number after he determines Brunor's Constitution score. See Step 3. Bob also notes the proficiency bonus for a first level character, which is +2. Number 3, determine ability scores. Much of what your character does in the game depends on his or her 6 abilities: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Each ability has a score, which is a number you record on your character sheet. The 6 abilities and their use in the game are described in Chapter 7. The ability score summary table provides a quick reference for what qualities are measured by each ability, what race increases which abilities, and what classes consider each ability particularly important. You generate your character's 6 ability scores randomly. You roll 4 6-sided dice and record the total of the highest 3 dice on a piece of scratch paper. Do this 5 more times so that you have 6 numbers. If you want to save time or you don't like the idea of randomly determining ability scores, you can use the following scores instead: 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8. Now take your 6 numbers and write each number beside one of your character's 6 abilities to assign scores to strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Afterwards, make any changes to your ability scores as a result of your race choice. After assigning your ability scores, determine your ability modifiers using the ability scores and modifiers table, which is in your book. To determine an ability modifier without consulting the table, subtract 10 from the ability score and then divide the result by 2, round down. Write the modifier next to each of your scores. Building Brunor, Step 3. Bob decides to use the standard set of scores, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8, for Brunor's abilities. Since he's a fighter, he puts his highest score, 15, in strength. His next highest, 14, goes in constitution. Brunor might be a brash fighter, but Bob decides he wants the dwarf to be older, wiser, and a good leader. So he puts decent scores in wisdom and charisma. After applying his racial benefits, including Brunor's constitution by 2 and his strength by 2, Brunor's ability scores and modifiers look like this: strength 17 plus 3, dexterity 10 plus 0, constitution 16 plus 3, intelligence 8 minus 1, wisdom 13 plus 1, charisma 12 plus 1. Bob fills in Brunor's final hit points, 10 plus his constitution modifier of plus 3 for a total of 13 hit points. Now here's a variant, customizing ability scores. At your Dungeon Master's option, you can use this variant for determining your ability scores. The method described here allows you to build a character with a set of ability scores you choose individually. You have 27 points to spend on your ability scores. The cost of each score is shown on the ability score point cost table. For example, a score of 14 costs 7 points. Using this method, 15 is the highest ability score you can end up with before applying racial increases. You can't have a score lower than 8. This method of determining ability scores enables you to create a set of 3 high numbers and 3 low ones. 15, 15, 15, 8, 8, 8. A set of numbers that are above average and nearly equal. 13, 13, 13, 12, 12, 12, or any set of numbers between those extremes. And then they have the ability score point cost. I'm not going to read that because it's sort of like a little chart, and it would be, you just follow along. There's an ability score point cost. Score 8 cost 0, score 9 cost 1, score 10 cost 2, score 11 cost 3, and so on. And there's the modifiers up here, ability scores and modifiers. I'm not going to read that. I'm just reading the Part 4, describe your character. Once you know the basic game aspects of your character, it's time to flesh him or her out as a person. Your character needs a name. Spend a few minutes thinking about what he or she looks like and how he or she behaves in general terms. Using the information in Chapter 4, Personality and Background, you can flesh out your character's appearance and personality. Choose your character's alignment, the moral compass that guides his or her decisions and ideals. Chapter 4 also helps you identify the things that your character holds most dear, called bonds, and the flaws that could one day undermine him or her. Your character's background describes where he or she came from, his or her original occupation, and the character's place in the D&D world. Your DM might offer additional backgrounds beyond the ones included in Chapter 4, and might be willing to work with you to craft a background that's a more precise fit for your character concept. A background gives your character a background feature, a general benefit, and proficiency in 2 skills. And it might also give you additional languages or proficiency with certain kinds of tools. Record this information along with the personality information you develop on your character sheet. Next, we're going to talk about your character's abilities. Take your character's ability scores and race into account as you flesh out his or her appearance and personality. A very strong character with low intelligence might think and behave very differently from a very smart character with low strength. For example, high strength usually corresponds with a burly or athletic body, while a character with low strength might be scrawny or plump. A character with a high dexterity is probably lithe and slim, while a character with low dexterity might be either gangly and awkward or heavy and thick-fingered. A character with high constitution usually looks healthy with bright eyes and abundant energy. A character with low constitution might be sickly or frail. A character with high intelligence might be highly inquisitive and studious, while a character with low intelligence might speak simply or easily forget details. A character with high wisdom has good judgment, empathy, and a general awareness of what's going on. A character with low wisdom might be absent-minded, foolhardy, or oblivious. A character with high charisma exudes confidence, which is usually mixed with a graceful or intimidating presence. A character with a low charisma might come across as abrasive, inarticulate, or timid. Building Bruenor, Step 4. Bob fills in some of Bruenor's basic details: his name, his sex, male, his height and weight, and his alignment. He's going to be lawful good. His high strength and constitution suggest a healthy, athletic body, and his low intelligence suggests a degree of forgetfulness. Bob decides that Bruenor comes from a noble line, but his clan was expelled from its homeland when Bruenor was very young. He grew up working as a smith in the remote village of Icewind Dale. But Bruenor has a heroic destiny to reclaim his homeland, so Bob chooses the folk hero background for his dwarf. He notes the proficiencies and special features this background gives him. Bob has a pretty clear picture of Bruenor's personality in mind, so he skips the personality traits suggested in the folk hero background, noting instead that Bruenor is a caring, sensitive dwarf who genuinely loves his friends and allies, but he hides this soft heart beneath a gruff, snarling demeanor. He chooses the ideal of fairness from the list in his background, noting that Bruenor believes that no one is above the law. Given his history, Bruenor's bond is obvious. He aspires to someday reclaim Mithril Hall, his homeland, from the shadow dragon that drove the dwarves out. His flaw is tied to his caring, sensitive nature. He has a soft spot for orphans and wayward souls, leading him to show mercy even when it might not be warranted. I think what we're going to do, I'm going to try to get through the races here. There's a lot. I don't know. We'll see. All right. 5. Choose equipment. Your class and background determine your character's starting equipment, including weapons, armor, and other adventuring gear. Record this equipment on your character sheet. All such items are detailed in Chapter 5, Equipment. Instead of taking the gear given to you by your class and background, you can purchase your starting equipment. You have a number of gold pieces, GP, to spend based on your class as shown in Chapter 5. Extensive lists of equipment with prices also appear in that chapter. If you wish, you can also have one trinket at no cost. See the trinkets table at the end of chapter 5. Your strength score limits the amount of gear you can carry. Try not to purchase equipment with a total weight in pounds exceeding your strength score times 15. Chapter 17 has more information on carrying capacity. Armor class. Your armor class, AC, represents how well your character avoids being wounded in battle. Things that contribute to your AC include the armor you wear, the shield you carry, and your dexterity modifier. Not all characters wear armor or carry shields. However, without armor or shield, your character's AC equals 10 plus his or her dexterity modifier. If your character wears armor, carries a shield, or both, calculate your AC using the rules in Chapter 5. Record your AC on your character sheet. Your character needs to be proficient with armor and shields to wear and use them efficiently, and your armor and shield proficiencies are determined by your class. There are drawbacks to wearing armor or carrying a shield if you lack the required proficiency, as explained in Chapter 5. Some spells and class features give you different ways to calculate your AC. If you have multiple features that give you different ways to calculate your AC, you choose which one to use. Weapons. For each weapon your character wields, calculate the modifier you use when you attack with the weapon and the damage you deal when you hit. When you make an attack with a weapon, you roll a d20 and add your proficiency bonus, but only if you are proficient with that weapon and the appropriate ability modifier. For attacks with melee weapons, use your strength modifier for attack and damage rolls. A weapon that has the finesse property, such as a rapier, can use your dexterity modifier instead. For attacks and ranged weapons, use your dexterity modifier for attack and damage rolls. A weapon that has the thrown property, such as a hand axe, can use your strength modifier instead. Building Bruenor, Step 5. Bob writes down the starting equipment from the fighter class and the folk hero background. His starting equipment includes chainmail and a shield, which combine to give Bruenor an armor class of 18. For Bruenor's weapons, Bob chooses a battle axe and 2 hand axes. His battle axe is a melee weapon, so Bruenor uses his strength modifier for his attacks and damage. His attack bonus in his strength modifier, +3, plus his proficiency bonus, +2, for a total of +5. The battle axe deals 1d8 slashing damage, and Bruenor adds his strength modifier to the damage when he hits, for a total of 1d8 +3 slashing damage. When throwing a hand axe, Bruenor has the same attack bonus. Hand axes, as thrown weapons, use strength for attacks and damage, and the weapon deals 1d6 +3 slashing damage when it hits. 6. Come together. Most D&D characters don't work alone. Each character plays a role with a party, a group of adventurers working together for a common purpose. Teamwork and cooperation greatly improve your party's chances to survive the many perils in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Talk to your fellow players and your DM to decide whether your characters know one another, how they met, and what sorts of quests the group might undertake. Beyond first level. As your character goes on adventures and overcomes challenges, he or she gains experiences represented by experience points. A character who reaches a specified experience point total advances in capability. This advancement is called gaining a level. When your character gains a level, his or her class often grants additional features as detailed in the class description. Some of these features allow you to increase your ability scores, either increasing 2 scores by 1 each or increasing 1 score by 2. You can't increase an ability score above 20. In addition, every character's proficiency bonus increases at certain levels. Each time you gain a level, you gain 1 additional hit die. Roll that hit die, add your Constitution modifier to the roll, and add the total to your hit point maximum. Alternatively, you can use the fixed value shown in your class entry, which is the average result of the die roll, rounded up. When your Constitution modifier increases by 1, your hit point maximum increases by 1 for each level you have attained. For example, when Brunor reaches 8th level as a fighter, he increases his Constitution score from 17 to 18, thus increasing his Constitution modifier from +3 to +4. His hit point maximum then increases by 8. The character advancement table summarizes the XP you need to advance in levels from level 1 through level 20, and the proficiency bonus for a character of that level. Consult the information in your character's class description to see what other improvements you gain at each level. And then there's a little chart of character advancement. Gives an example of how many experience points you have, what level you are at, and what your proficiency bonus is. And a little chart right down there, okay? Tiers of play. The shading in the character advancement table shows the 4 tiers of play. Okay, yeah, there it is. Level 1 through 4, level 5 through 10, level 11 through 16, level 17 through 20. The tiers don't have any rules associated with them. They are a general description of how the play experience changes as characters gain levels. In the first tier, levels 1 through 4, characters are effectively apprentice adventurers. They're learning the features that define them as members of particular classes, including the major choices that flavor their class. Features as they advance, such as Wizard's Arcane Tradition or Fighter's Martial Archetype. The threats they face are relatively minor, usually posing a danger to local farmsteads or villages. In the second tier, levels 5 through 10, characters come into their own. Many spellcasters gain access to 3rd level spells at the start of this tier, crossing a new threshold of magical powers with spells such as Fireball and Lightning Bolt. At this tier, many weapon-using classes gain the ability to make multiple attacks in one round. These characters have become important, facing dangers that threaten cities and kingdoms. In the 3rd tier, levels 11 through 16, characters have reached a level of power that sets them high above the ordinary populace and makes them special even among adventurers. At 11th level, many spellcasters gain access to 6th level spells, some of which create effects previously impossible for player characters to achieve. Other characters gain features that allow them to make more attacks or do more impressive things with those attacks. These mighty adventurers might often confront threats to whole regions or continents. At the 4th tier, levels 17 through 20, characters achieve the pinnacle of their class features, becoming heroic or villainous archetypes of their own right, in their own right. The fate of the world, or even the fundamental order of the multiverse, might hang in the balance during their adventures. So be sure and check out the character advancement chart right there, and so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, Chapter 2, Races. Now, I know there's no way I'm going to be able to do all these races in this one video, because, God, it's like 60 pages. But we're going to do what we can here. The basics, getting you started here on races. We'll definitely do dwarf and probably elf, and I might stop it at that point. Yeah. I need a drink of water. Chapter 2, and here's some artwork here for you. Sitting around the fire, adventurers sitting around the fire. Chapter 2, Races. A visit to one of the great cities in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, Waterdeep, the free city of Greyhawk, or even uncanny Sigil, the city of doors, overwhelms the senses. Voices chatter in countless different languages. The smells of cooking in dozens of different cuisines mingle with the odors of crowded streets and poor sanitation. Buildings in myriad architectural styles display the diverse origin of their inhabitants. And the people themselves, people of varying size, shape, and color, dressed in a dazzling spectrum of styles and hues, represent many different races, from diminutive halflings and stout dwarves to majestically beautiful elves, mingling among a variety of human ethnicities. Scattered among the members of these more common races are the true exotics, a hulking dragonborn here, pushing his way through the crowd, and a sly tiefling there, lurking in the shadows with mischief in her eyes. A group of gnomes laugh as one of them activates a clever wooden toy that moves on its own accord. Half-elves and half-orcs live and work alongside humans, without fully belonging to the races of their parents. And there, well out of the sunlight, is a lone drow, a fugitive from the subterranean expanse of the Underdark, trying to make his way in a world that fears his kind. All right, choosing a race. Oh, choosing a race. Oh, boy. Humans are the most common people in the worlds of D&D, but they live and work alongside dwarves, elves, halflings, and countless other fantastic species. Your character belongs to one of these peoples. Not every intelligent race of the multiverse is appropriate for a player-controlled adventurer. Dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans are the most common races to produce the sort of adventurers who make up typical parties. Dragonborn, gnomes, half-elves, half-orcs, and tieflings are less common as adventurers. Drow, a sub-race of elves, are also uncommon. Your choice of race affects many different aspects of your character. It establishes fundamental qualities that exist throughout your character's adventuring career. When making this decision, keep in mind the kind of character you want to play. For example, a halfling could be a good choice for a sneaky rogue. A dwarf makes a tough character, and an elf can be a master of arcane magic. Your character race not only affects your ability scores and traits, but also provides the cues for building your character's story. Each race's description in this chapter includes information to help you role-play a character of that race, including personality, physical appearance, features of society, and racial alignment tendencies. These details are suggestions to help you think about your character. Adventurers can deviate widely from the norm for their race. It's worthwhile to consider why your character is different, as a helpful way to think about your character's background and personality. All right, racial traits. The description of each race includes racial traits that are common to members of that race. The following entries appear among the traits of most races. Ability score increase. Every race increases one or more of a character's ability scores. Age. The age entry notes the age when a member of the race is considered an adult, as well as the race's expected lifespan. This information can help you decide how old your character is at the start of the game. You can choose any age for your character, which could provide an explanation for some of your ability scores. For example, if you play a very young or very old character, your age could explain a particularly low strength or constitution score, while advanced age could account for a high intelligence or wisdom. Alignment. Most races have tendencies towards certain alignments described in this entry. These are not binding for player characters, but considering why your dwarf is chaotic, for example, in defiance of lawful dwarf society, can help you better define your character. Size. Characters of most races are medium, a size category including creatures that are roughly 4 to 8 feet tall. Members of a few races are small, between 2 and 4 feet tall, which means that certain rules of the game affect them differently. The most important of these races is that small characters have trouble wielding heavy weapons, as explained in Chapter 5, Equipment. Speed. Your speed determines how far you can move when traveling. In Chapter 8, Adventuring, and Fighting, Chapter 9, Combat. You can find more information about that. Languages. By virtue of your race, your character can speak, read, and write certain languages. Chapter 4, Personality and Background, lists the most common languages of the D&D multiverse. Sub-races. Some races have sub-races. Members of a subrace have the traits of the particular race in addition to the traits specified for their subrace. Relationships among subraces vary significantly from race to race and world to world. In the Dragonlance campaign setting, for example, mountain dwarves and hill dwarves live together as different clans of the same people, but in the Forgotten Realms they live far apart in separate kingdoms and call themselves shield dwarves and gold dwarves, respectively. All right. So the first one we're going to talk about here, oh boy, dwarf. I'm about to tell you all about a dwarf. Happens to be my personal favorite race. Dwarf. "You're late, elf," came the rough edge of a familiar voice. Brunor Battlehammer walked up the back of his dead foe, disregarding the fact that the heavy monster lay on top of his elven friend. In spite of the added discomfort, the dwarf's long, pointed, often broken nose and gray-streaked, still fiery red beard came as a welcome sight to Drizzt. "Knew I'd find you in trouble if I came out and looking for ye." And that is from R.A. Salvatore's novel, The Crystal Shard. Kingdoms rich in ancient grandeur, halls carved into the roots of mountains, the echoing of picks and hammers in deep mines and blazing forges, a commitment to clan and tradition, and a burning hatred of goblins and orcs. These common threads unite all dwarves. Short and stout. Bold and hardy, dwarves are known as skilled warriors, miners, and workers of stone and metal. Though they stand well under 5 feet tall, dwarves are so broad and compact that they can weigh as much as a human standing nearly 2 feet taller. Their courage and endurance are also easily a match for any of the larger folk. Dwarven skin ranges from deep brown to a paler hue tinged with red, but the most common shades are light brown or deep tan, like certain tones of earth. Their hair, worn long, but in simple styles, is usually black, gray, or brown, though paler dwarves often have red hair. Male dwarves value their beards highly and groom them carefully. Long memory, long grudges. Dwarves can live to be more than 400 years old, so the oldest living dwarves often remember a very different world. For example, some of the oldest dwarves living in Citadel Felbar, in the world of the Forgotten Realms, can recall the day more than 3 centuries ago when orcs conquered the fortress and drove them into an exile that lasted over 250 years. This longevity grants them a perspective on the world that shorter-lived races, such as humans and halflings, lack. Dwarves are solid and enduring like the mountains they love, weathering the passage of centuries with stoic endurance and little change. They respect their traditions of their clans, tracing their ancestry back to the founding of their most ancient strongholds in the youth of the world, and don't abandon those traditions lightly. Part of those traditions is devotion to the gods of the dwarves, who uphold the dwarven ideals of industrious labor, skill in battle, and devotion to the forge. Individual dwarves are determined and loyal, true to their world and decisive in action, sometimes to the point of stubbornness. Many dwarves have a strong sense of justice, and they are slow to forget wrongs they have suffered. A wrong done to one dwarf is a wrong done to the dwarf's entire clan, so what begins as one dwarf's hunt for vengeance can become a full-blown clan feud. Clans and kingdoms. Dwarven kingdoms stretch deep beneath the mountains where the dwarves mine gems and precious metals and forge items of wonder. They love the beauty and artistry of precious metals and fine jewelry, and in some dwarves this love festers into avarice? Whatever wealth they can't find in their mountains, they gain through trade. They dislike boats, so enterprising humans and halflings frequently handle trade in dwarven goods along water routes. Trustworthy members of other races are welcome in dwarf settlements, though some areas are off limits to them. The chief unit of dwarven society is the clan, and dwarves highly value social standing. Even dwarves who live far from their own kingdoms cherish their clan identities and affiliations, recognize related dwarves, and invoke their ancestors' names in oaths and curses. To be clanless is the worst fate that can befall a dwarf. Dwarves in other lands are typically artisans, especially weaponsmiths, armorers, and jewelers. Some become mercenaries or bodyguards, highly sought after for their courage and loyalty. Gods, gold, and clan. Dwarves who take up the adventuring life might be motivated by a desire for treasure for its own sake, for a specific purpose, or even out of an altruistic desire to help others. Other dwarves are driven by the command or inspiration of a deity, a direct calling, or simply a desire to bring glory to one of the dwarf gods. Clan and ancestry are also important motivators. A dwarf might seek to restore a clan's lost honor, avenge an ancient wrong the clan suffered, or earn a new place within the clan after having been exiled. Or a dwarf might search for the axe wielded by a mighty ancestor lost on the field of battle centuries ago. And then there's a little information box here. Slow to trust. Dwarves get along passably well with most other races. The difference between an acquaintance and a friend is about 100 years. That's a dwarf saying that might be hyperbole, but certainly points to how difficult it can be for a member of a short-lived race like humans to earn a dwarf's trust. This is the relationship with elves and trust. It's not wise to depend on the elves. No telling what an elf will do next. When the hammer meets the orc's head, they're as apt to start singing as to pull out a sword. They're flighty and frivolous. Two things to be said for them, though. They don't have many smiths, but the ones they have do very fine work. And when orcs or goblins come streaming down out of the mountains, an elf's good to have at your back. Not as good as a dwarf, maybe, but no doubt they hate the orcs as much as we do. Halflings. Sure, they're pleasant folk, but show me a halfling hero, an empire, a triumphant army, even a treasure for the ages made by halfling hands. Nothing. I can even take them seriously. Humans. You take the time to get to know a human, and by then the human's on her deathbed. If you're lucky, she's got kin, a daughter or a granddaughter maybe, who's got hands and heart as good as hers. That's when you can make a human friend and watch them go. They set their hearts on something, they'll get it, whether it's a dragon's hoard or an empire's throne. You have to admire that kind of dedication, even if it gets them in trouble more often than not. Oh boy. You know what? I might end this with dwarves. Or wait a minute. No, I'm going to do elf. We'll do dwarves, we'll do elf, and then we'll end this particular part 2. Dwarf names. Boy, some of these might be a bit challenging to pronounce. A dwarf's name is granted by a clan elder in accordance with tradition. Every proper dwarven name has been used and reused down throughout the generations. A dwarf's name belongs to the clan, not to the individual. A dwarf who misuses or brings shame to a clan name is stripped of the name and forbidden by law to use any dwarven name in that place. All right, here's an example of some male names. Adric, Alberich, Baron, Baren, Brator, Brunor, Dane, Darik, Delg, Eberk, Einkill, Fargrim, Flint, Gardane, Harbeck, Kildrak, Morgran, Orsic, Oskar, Rangram, Rurik, Taklin, Thoradin, Thorin, Tordek, Traban, Travik, Ulfgar, Veet, Vandal, and then there's female names. Amber, Arten, Ahild, Bardrin, Dagnall, Diessa, Eldeth, Falkran, Fenelin, Gunlada, Girdis, Helja, Helene, Cathra, Christride, Ild, Liftrasa, Mardrid, Riswin, Sanol, Torbera, Torga, Vistra. And then names of clans, I guess it would be like last names. Baldirk, Battlehammer, Brawnanvil, Dankill, Fireforge, Frostbeard, Gorun, Holderheck, Ironfist, Lauder, Lutger, Rumnaheim, Strackhelm, Torin, Ungart. And now we're going to talk about dwarf traits. Your dwarf character has an assortment of inborn abilities, part and parcel of dwarven nature. Ability score increase. Your constitution score increases by 2. Age. Dwarves mature at the same rate as humans, but they're considered young until they reach the age of 50. On average, they live about 350 years. Alignment. Most dwarves are lawful, believing firmly in the benefits of a well-ordered society. They tend towards good as well, with a strong sense of fair play and a belief that everyone deserves to share in the benefits of a just order. Size. Dwarves stand between 4 and 5 feet tall and average about 150 pounds. Your size is medium. Speed. Your base walking speed is 25 feet. Your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor. Dark vision. Accustomed to life underground, you have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern color in darkness, only shades of gray. Dwarven resilience. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. Explained in Chapter 9, Combat. Dwarven combat training. You have proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and a war hammer. Tool proficiency. You gain proficiency with the artisan's tools of your choice, smith's tools, brewer's supplies, or mason's tools. Stone cunning. Whenever you make an intelligence history check related to the origin of stonework, you are considered proficient in the history skill and add double your proficiency bonus to the check instead of your normal proficiency bonus. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and Dwarfish. Dwarfish is full of hard consonants and guttural sounds, and those characteristics spill over into whatever other language a dwarf might speak. Subrace. 2 main subraces of dwarves populate the world of D&D, hill dwarves and mountain dwarves. Choose one of these subraces. And then I'll quickly tell you the difference between them. A hill dwarf. As a hill dwarf, you have keen senses, deep intuition, and remarkable resilience. The gold dwarves of Faerun in their mighty southern kingdom are hill dwarves, as are the exiled Nidar and the debased Klar of Kryn in the Dragonlance setting. Ability score increase. Your wisdom score increases by 1. Dwarven toughness. Your hit point maximum increases by 1, and it increases by 1 every time you gain a level. Mountain dwarf. As a mountain dwarf, you're strong and hardy, accustomed to a difficult life in rugged terrain. You're probably on the tall side for a dwarf and tend toward lighter coloration. The shield dwarves of northern Faerun, as well as the ruling Hylar clan and the noble Daewar clan of Dragonlance, are mountain dwarves. Ability score increase. Your strength score increases by 2. Dwarven armor training. You have proficiency with light and medium armor. And there's a little information box here. Durgar. In cities deep in the Underdark live the Durgar, or Grey Dwarves. These vicious, stealthy slave traders raid the surface world for captives, then sell their prey to the other races of the Underdark. They have innate magical abilities to become invisible and to temporarily grow to giant size. Wow. Okay, gang, we're about at an hour now. I'm going to read 1, 2, 3 pages about elves. And then next up will be, actually, after elves in the next video that I do, we're going to go into halflings, and then humans, and then dragonborns, and then gnomes, and then half-elves, half-orcs, tieflings. And boy, there's just tons of... Golly. Okay, there's going to be a lot of videos. All right, elf. All right. And I'm going to read to you an excerpt. I have never imagined such beauty existed, Goldmoon said softly. The day's march had been difficult, but the reward at the end was beyond their dreams. The companions stood on a high cliff over the fabled city of Qualanost. Here's a picture of an elf. Right there. Okay. 4 slender spires rose from the city's corners like glistening spindles, their brilliant white stone marbled with shining silver. Graceful arches, swooping from spire to spire, soared through the air. Crafted by ancient dwarven metalsmiths, they were strong enough to hold the weight of an army, yet they appeared so delicate that a bird lighting on them might overthrow the balance. These glistening arcs were the city's only boundaries. There was no wall around Qualanost. The elven city opened its arms lovingly to the wilderness. And that is from Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman from the Dragons of Autumn Twilight. All right, let's talk about elves. Elves are a magical people of otherworldly grace, living in the world but not entirely part of it. They live in places of ethereal beauty, in the midst of ancient forests, or in silvery spires glittering with fairy light, where soft music drifts through the air and gentle fragrances waft on the breeze. Elves love nature and magic, art and artistry, music and poetry, and the good things of the world. Slender and graceful. With their unearthly grace and fine features, elves appear hauntingly beautiful to humans and members of many other races. They are slightly shorter than humans on average, ranging from well under 5 feet tall to just over 6 feet. They are more slender than humans, weighing only 100 to 145 pounds. Males and females are about the same height, and males are only marginally heavier than females. Elves' coloration encompasses the normal human range and also includes skin in shades of copper, bronze, and almost bluish white, hair of green or blue, and eyes like pools of liquid gold or silver. Elves have no facial and little body hair. They favor elegant clothing in bright colors, and they enjoy simple yet lovely jewelry. A timeless perspective. Elves can live well over 700 years, giving them a broad perspective on events that might trouble the shorter-lived races more deeply. They are more often amused than excited, and more likely to be curious than greedy. They tend to remain aloof and unfazed by petty happenstance. When pursuing a goal, however, whether adventuring on a mission or learning a new skill or art, elves can be focused and relentless. They are slow to make friends and enemies, and even slower to forget them. They reply to petty insults with disdain and to serious insults with vengeance. Like the branches of a young tree, elves are flexible in the face of danger. They trust in diplomacy and compromise to resolve differences before they escalate to violence. They have been known to retreat from intrusions into their woodland homes, confident that they can simply wait the invaders out. But when the need arises, elves reveal a stern martial side, demonstrating skill with sword, bow, and strategy. Hidden woodland realms. Most elves dwell in small forest villages hidden among the trees. Elves hunt game, gather food, and grow vegetables, and their skill and magic allow them to support themselves without the need for clearing and plowing land. They are talented artisans, crafting finely worked clothes and art objects. Their contact with outsiders is usually limited, though a few elves make a good living by trading crafted items for metals, which they have no interest in mining. Elves encountered outside of their own lands are commonly traveling minstrels, artists, or sages. Human nobles compete for the services of elf instructors to teach swordplay or magic to their children. Exploration and adventure. Elves take up adventuring out of wanderlust. Since they are so long-lived, they can enjoy centuries of exploration and discovery. They dislike the pace of human society, which is regimented from day to day, but constantly changing over decades. So they find careers that let them travel freely and set their own pace. Elves also enjoy exercising their martial prowess, or gaining greater magical power, and adventuring allows them to do so. Some might join with rebels, fighting against oppression, and others might become champions of moral causes. Now we're going to go into elf names. Elves are considered children until they declare themselves adults, sometime after the 100th birthday, and before this period they are called by child names. On declaring adulthood, an elf selects an adult name, although those who knew him or her as a youngster might continue to use the child name. Each elf's adult name is a unique creation, though it might reflect the names of respected individuals or other family members. Little distinction exists between male names and female names. The groups here reflect only general tendencies. In addition, every elf bears a family name, typically a combination of other elvish words. Some elves traveling among humans translate their family names into common, but others retain the elvish version. So an example of some child names are Ara, Bryn, Del, Aaron, Thane, Enil, Lael, Mela or Mela, Nail, Neris, Fan, Rail, Rin, Sai, Silen, Thea, and Vol. Male adult names: Adrin, Aelar, Aramil, Aranis, Ost, Barrow, Barion, or Barion, Carrick, Anilius, or Aenelis, Erden, Aravan, Galandan, Hadarai, Hain, Hemo, Emeril, Evelius, Lucian or Lawshan, Mindartus, Peleus, Perrin, Corin, Riordan, Roland, Sovalis, Thermior, Tharaval, Theron, Varys. Female adult names: Adri, Althea, Anastriana, I like that one, Andrast, Antinua, Bethrina, Berel, Kalin, Drusilia, Enna, Philocial, Elenia, Jelenith, Caliph, Leshana, Leah, Mariel, Miali, Nevara, Quelena, Quiloth, Serial, Shanera, Shava, Siliqui, Therasta, Thea, Vadania, Valanth, Xanathia. And then there's family names, common translations. These would be like the last names. Amicur, which means gemflower. Amastasia, which means starflower. Galanadel, which means moon whisper. Halimion, which means diamond dew. Ilfelker, gem blossom. Leodon, silver frond. Meliamni, oaken heel. Nalo, night breeze. Cyanodel, moonbrook. And Xylocient, which is gold petal. All right, and then here's a little box, a little information box here for you. This is haughty but gracious. Although they can be haughty, elves are generally gracious, even to those who fall short of their high expectations, which is most non-elves. Still, they can find good in just about anyone. Their thoughts on dwarves. Dwarves are dull, clumsy oafs, but what they lack in humor, sophistication, and manners, they make up in valor. And I must admit, their best smiths produce art that approaches elven quality. Their thoughts on halflings. Halflings are people of simple pleasures, and that is not a quality to scorn. They're good folk. They care for each other, and they tend their gardens, and they have proven themselves tougher than they seem when the need arises. And humans, all that haste, their ambition and drive to accomplish something before their brief lives pass away. Human endeavors seem so futile sometimes, but then you look at what they have accomplished, and you have to appreciate their achievements. If only they could slow down and learn some refinement. All right, now we're going to talk about elf traits. And we've got one more page after that, and then we're done. Elf traits. What's four pages? Okay. Your elf character has a variety of natural abilities, the result of thousands of years of elven refinement. Ability score increase. Your dexterity score increases by 2. Age. Although elves reach physical maturity at about the same age as humans, the elven understanding of adulthood goes beyond physical growth to encompass worldly experience. An elf typically claims adulthood and an adult name around the age of 100 and can live to be 750 years old. Alignment. Elves love freedom, variety, and self-expression, so they can lean strongly towards the gentler aspects of chaos. They value and protect others' freedom as well as their own, and they are more often good than not. The Drow are an exception. Their exile into the Underdark has made them vicious and dangerous. Drow are more often evil than not. Size. Elves range from under 5 feet to over 6 feet tall and have slender builds. Your size is medium. Speed. Your base walking speed is 30 feet. Dark vision. Accustomed to twilight forest and the night sky, you have superior vision in dark and dim conditions. You can see in dim light within 60 feet of you as if it were light, and in darkness as if it were dim light. You can't discern colors in darkness, only shades of gray. Keen senses. You have proficiency in the perception skill. Fey ancestry. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. Trance. Elves don't need to sleep. Instead, they meditate deeply, remaining semi-conscious for 4 hours a day. The common word for such meditation is trance. While meditating, you can dream after a fashion. Such dreams are actually mental exercises that have become reflexive through years of practice. After resting in this way, you can gain the same benefit that a human does from 8 hours of sleep. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and Elvish. Elvish is fluid with subtle intonations and intricate grammar. Elven literature is rich and varied, and their songs and poems are famous among other races. Many bards learn their language so they can add Elvish ballads to their repertoires. Subrace. Ancient divides among the elven people resulted in 3 main subraces: high elves, wood elves, and dark elves, who are commonly called drow. Choose one of these subraces. In some worlds, these subraces are divided still further, such as the Sun Elves and Moon Elves of the Forgotten Realms. So if you wish, you can choose a narrower subrace. High Elf. Let us talk of High Elves. As a High Elf, you have a keen mind and a mastery of at least the basics of magic. In many of the worlds of D&D, there are two kinds of High Elves. One type, which includes the Grey Elves and the Valley Elves of Greyhawk, the Sylvanesti of Dragonlance, and the Sun Elves of the Forgotten Realms, is haughty and reclusive, believing themselves to be superior to non-elves and even other elves. The other type, including the High Elves of Greyhawk, the Qualinesti of Dragonlance, and the Moon Elves of the Forgotten Realms, are more common and more friendly and often encountered among humans and other races. The Sun Elves of Faerun, also called Gold Elves or Sunrise Elves, have bronze skin and hair of copper, black, or golden blonde. Their eyes are golden, silver, or black. Moon Elves, also called Silver Elves or Grey Elves, are much paler, with alabaster skin, sometimes tinged with blue. They often have hair of silver, white, black, or blue, but various shades of blonde, brown, and red are not uncommon. Their eyes are blue or green and flecked with gold. Ability score increase. Your intelligence score increases by 1. Elf weapon training. You have proficiency with the long sword, short bow, and long bow. Cantrip. You know one cantrip of your choice from the wizard's spell list. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for it. Extra language. You can speak, read, and write one extra language of your choice. All right, so we just need to talk about Wood Elves and Dark Elves, and a little bit more about the darkness of the Drow, and then that will finish up this video on YouTube or wherever you're watching it. All right, Wood Elf. As a Wood Elf, you have keen senses and intuition, and your fleet feet carry you quickly and stealthily through your native forest. This category includes the Wild Elves, Grugash of Greyhawk, and the Kaganesti of Dragonlance, as well as the races called Wood Elves in Greyhawk and the Forgotten Realms. In Faerun, Wood Elves, often called Wild Elves, Green Elves, or Forest Elves, are reclusive and distrusting of non-elves. Wood Elf skin tends to be copperish in hue, sometimes with traces of green. Their hair tends towards brown and blacks, but it is occasionally blonde or copper-colored. Their eyes are green, brown, or hazel. The ability score increase. This is for Wood Elves. Your wisdom score increases by 1. Elf weapon training. You have proficiency with the long sword, short bow, and longbow. Fleet of foot. Your base walking speed increases to 35 feet. Mask of the Wild. You can attempt to hide even when you are only lightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist, and other natural phenomenon. Now, the Dark Elf. Descended from an earlier subrace of elves, the Drow were banished from the surface world for following the goddess Lolth down the path of evil. Now they have built their own civilization in the depths of the Underdark, patterned after the way of Lolth. Also called Dark Elves, the Drow have skin that resembles charcoal or obsidian, as well as stark white or pale yellow hair. They commonly have very pale eyes, so pale as to be mistaken for white in shades of lilac, silver, pink, red, and blue. They tend to be smaller and thinner than most elves. Drow adventurers are rare. Check with your dungeon master to see if you can play one. Ability score increase. Your charisma score increases by 1. Superior dark vision. Your dark vision has a radius of 120 feet. Sunlight sensitivity. You have disadvantage on attack rolls and on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight when you, the target of your attack, or whatever you are trying to perceive, is in direct sunlight. Drow magic. You know the dancing light cantrips. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast the Fairy Fire spell once with this trait, and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. When you reach 5th level, you can cast the darkness spell once with this trait and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. Charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells. Drow weapon training. You have proficiency with rapiers, short swords, and hand crossbows. The darkness of the Drow. Were it not for renowned exception, the race of Drow would be universally reviled. To most, they are a race of demon-worshipping marauders dwelling in the subterranean depths of the Underdark, emerging only on the blackest nights to pillage and slaughter the surface dwellers they despise. Their society is depraved and preoccupied with the favor of Lolth, their spider goddess, who sanctions murder and the extermination of entire families as noble houses vie for position. Yet one Drow, at least, broke the mold in the world of the Forgotten Realms. Drist du Erden, Ranger of the North, has proven his quality as a good-hearted defender of the weak and innocent, rejecting his heritage and adrift in a world that looks upon him with terror and loathing. Drist is a model for those few Drow who follow in his footsteps, trying to find a life apart from the evil society of their Underdark homes. Drow grow up believing that surface-dwelling races are inferior, worthless, except as slaves. Drow who develop a conscience or find it necessary to cooperate with members of other races find it hard to overcome that prejudice, especially when they are so often on the receiving end of hatred. All right? We're on page 24. And page 25, there's a picture. I assume that is of an elf. All right? So when we pick up part 3, whenever that could be, it might be a week from now, it might be a year from now, just whenever I feel that I want to pick it up again, we're going to start on Halflings on page 26. And this whole book has, let's see, we don't need to include the index, maybe the appendix. I don't know, there's lots of charts and stuff in the back, but it's a little under 300 pages. So we are on page 26 is where we're going to pick up. So we're put a little dent in it tonight. But I want to thank you again for joining me for the D&D Player's Handbook 5th edition. Tell you quickly a little bit about myself. My name is Chris Kepics. When I'm not doing books on tape or read-alongs, I am a full-time DJ. If you're really old, you might know this as a disc jockey, but I work at a club full-time, and I also do weddings, special events, conventions. I do Comic-Con. I'm the official DJ for the Tidewater Comic-Con, the Hampton Comic-Con. I also do this yearly horror convention called Haunted Screams. And you can see me at a lot of events. There's a swimming facility near us called the Aquaplex that holds swim meets there, and they also have me come in there and do music for them. So pretty much any occasion that you can think of that needs music. So I enjoy hunting, fishing, anything in the outdoors. We raise animals. I raise rabbits and chickens and ducks and pigs currently. We have dogs and cats and fish on the inside of the house. So, but I love D&D. I got turned on to it about, gosh, maybe 2016 or 17, not that long ago. But I just love it. I love watching YouTube videos on it. There's so many great channels, Critical Role, DM Scotty, the DM Craft. There's a million other great, maybe I'll give you some shout outs next time, but there's at least a dozen great D&D channels that I watch on the Black Magic Craft too is another one that I can think of. But there's these two sort of nerdy D&D guys. I can't think of what their channel's called right now, and they sort of break down everything, but they do it with just general knowledge. They don't read out of the book, you know. It's just they have acquired it over years and years of playing. But again, thank you very much. Please, again, like, comment, subscribe. If you track me down on Facebook, I probably won't accept your friend request, only because I really only like to accept friend requests from people that I know personally. If you track me down on Instagram, at Chris Kepics, I'm happy to have you follow me. I would love to have that. And I have a website for my company. It's called Digital DJs of Hampton Roads. You can go to ddjhr.com. That will probably link you to all my social media sites. You can follow me. You can follow my DJ page on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram. I think I'm on Twitter and TikTok and all the popular social media platforms. But again, thank you for listening along. I'm sorry to give this long, boring explanation at the end, but at least it didn't end abruptly this time, right? And hopefully, eventually, after a while, when I get this posted, I'll be able to say, hey, click here, or click here, or click here, or click here to go and watch part 3 or go back and watch part 1. Again, I thank you, and have a wonderful, magical day, and happy adventures. Oh, please comment. Like, comment, subscribe. Most important, comment. I love comments. I read them all, and if it's a thoughtful enough question, I sometimes answer them. So there you go. Thank you once again.